Brian Burke of Sportsnet joining us. Burkey, how you doing, man?
Good, guys. How are you?
Pretty good. Let's start with the Canucks, because we had Travis Green on last hour. Burkey, what sticks out to you when you watch Vancouver play right now?
Well, they came out with a snarl that they don't usually display. They came out and said, this is a team that likes to hit, so we're going to hit. And I thought I was really impressed with the physical display they put on. And then they stuck with the game plan and put it away. So I was impressed.
It's funny because Travis Green came on here, and it was interesting given the Leafs redux. And he said, we play the type of hockey that is conducive to winning this time of year. And I didn't know that they had that in them. I knew they had the players. I love the additions that Jim Benning has made to this team. But maybe what's most impressive, Brian, is that it's not those guys carrying the load. Like JT Miller's been good, but their young kids have been really good.
Yeah, they've done a good job restocking the pantry there, and they've got good young players. They've got exciting young players. And right now they're buying in. They think they can win this series, and they played like it.
How much pushback do you expect from St. Louis tomorrow night in Game 2?
Well, I didn't think St. Louis was that bad. I mean, they have to play a certain way to win. They're going to play heavy hockey, and there were a lot of big hits. And as I've said repeatedly on television, those hits accumulate in the course of a 7-game series. So you see a guy take a huge hit in Game 1, and in Game 2, he might not take that same hit. He might just bail on the puck. So I'm a big believer in playing physical and staying with it. That's how they play. I don't think they'll change their game much, and I think there's still going to be a problem for Vancouver.
Brian Burke joining us here on Tim and Sid. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go to Claude Julien. We wish him the speediest of recoveries because we don't know a hell of a lot. So I got to ask you, how much does this change a team to have their head coach missing for what we're told is the rest of the season? Or sorry, the series.
The series, yeah. It's far from ideal. And obviously our first thoughts are the health of Claude Julien, who's a great guy and a great coach. But it's not ideal. But Kirk Muller is a pretty seasoned guy. And assistant coaches now have a big voice on teams more than they used to. So I think the players will just view it as, okay, we got Kirk behind the bench instead of Claude. Let's get her done.
In the release on the back end, and I don't know why it stuck out to me, but in everything that's going on, the Habs did make the point of letting the media know Kirk Muller does not know French like that. Even in this moment, is there pressure on him to try and communicate with that part of the media in Montreal? I found that really odd that they would put that in a press release where you're talking about the health of your coach. I found it strange.
Well, I think it's important in that marketplace that the coach speak French. And when Mark Crawford was hired to coach the Quebec Nordiques, one contingency in his contract, or one requirement was that he learn French, and he immediately began working with a tutor. It is important in that marketplace, but I think everyone understands you've got a health issue here. You can't be harping on that.
Kirk Muller's pretty well thought of, though. Like he could be the next head coach somewhere, couldn't he?
Yes, for sure. This is not catastrophic. This is not, like John Tortorella really dominates the coaching staff there and dominates the team and the message to the team. That would be a bigger issue. I think Claude's more collegial, involves his assistants more, and Kirk Muller, as you say, the players respect him as a player that played the right way, had a long and successful career. They'll listen to him. I don't think this is a big deal.
It's a tough one for me, Berkey. 24 seed, last one to get into the postseason. Just the second playoff appearance in 5 seasons for Montreal. But do you look at Marc Bergevin's rebuild a little differently now that they took out Pittsburgh? And I say this knowing full well Carey Price will be 33 in 3 days and Shea Weber is 35 tomorrow.
Well, the problem with working in Montreal is that you're stupid twice, right? You're stupid in French and you're stupid in English. And so every trade you make gets criticized and questioned. Bergie, as we call him, has made some great trades. And the young players, you got Suzuki in the deal for Pacioretty. And Nick Suzuki's been phenomenal. And he's a big kid. Like you think of him as a smaller guy, but he's thick. He's a 200-pounder. And Kotkaniemi's having a good playoff too. So all of a sudden, they've gone from an over-the-hill team, and Shea Weber's got lots of hockey left in him. I don't care if it's his birthday or not, but he's still got lots of hockey left in him. He's playing like he's 5 years younger. And so to me, if I'm a Montreal season ticket holder, I got a lot more hope right now watching those two kids than I did before. And Brett Kulak stepped up and played well for them. Another good acquisition. So, yeah, I think he's done some great things. They've got some holes. But right now, the reason they're still playing is Carey Price.
Yeah. Oh, he's been fun. And again, one of the greatest saves in the history of hockey. And I don't think I'm overstating it last night. That was
Nick Suzuki thinks so.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched that, and I'm thinking to myself watching, have I ever seen a better save? And I'm not sure I have.
I can't fight you on that. That was one, and the save was messed up when you had to watch it like 3 or 4 times to kind of figure out it was like one of Vince Carter's dunks in the dunk off. You had to watch it a couple of times to figure out what it is you just saw. Berkey, my question is the kid at the other end, though. I mean, you have the motivation of taking on your hero Carter Hart, taking on Carey Price. When you see Carter Hart, do you see the type of goalie that people envision for this young man?
I do, but I mean, this year they played him in a lot of home games early, and they played Elliott on the road games. Or no, I might have it backwards, but they were protecting him earlier in the year. He's really emerged the second half of the season, and he looks like a top young goalie. But it's only one game, and we'll see. I really like their team. I think Montreal's in trouble, but I think that he looked really confident. He didn't look like a kid.
I want to get to the Leafs, the end of season availability, but we have one more Canadian team that I want to get to, and you know it pretty well. The Calgary Flames will play Game 2 of their series with the Dallas Stars tonight, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. That is 8:30 local in Calgary. Are you seeing something different from this team than you've seen before, or are they finally figuring out what playoff hockey needs to be?
Answer to both questions is yes. First off, I think they've gone to a much more physical style the last 10 or 15 games before the pause. And they start their third line, and they've got big, ugly people that play big and ugly. And the other thing, too, is they don't have to rely on one line like they did when I was there. If Monahan's line wasn't going, then the team wasn't going. Now they're getting secondary scoring from people like Dylan Dubé. They're a much deeper team, but they will rattle your teeth. And it's really important, I think, to create room for the skill guys when you have that component. And that's Brian Burke hockey. When you're bottom 6, you want some ugly people in there.
But there's also the scenario playing out in Calgary where, I mean, obviously the top line got eviscerated in the media after the Colorado series last season. When you have a line like the Dubé line with Bennett and Lucic doing what they're doing, Lucic's taking faceoffs again, and basically they're doing the Zoom post-game news conferences. They're the line people kind of want to talk to. How much heat does that take off Gaudreau and Monahan and allow them just to kind of be them without that pressure, and then they can find themselves?
I think it takes a lot of pressure off them, and obviously, usually when that happens, when a big line goes dry, the team struggles and people don't step up. So this is a luxury. It gives them some time to find their game. And I noticed that Sean Monahan's contributing in other ways. He's throwing big body checks. That's not his game. So I always had a theory. I tell players this. It's not going to be going for you every night. You're not going to feel the puck every night. So there's 82 games. So in the games when you're not feeling it, you have to find another way to contribute. It might be winning faceoffs. It might be winning face-off battles if you're a winger. It might be forechecking aggressively, throwing big hits. But you can make a difference in the game, even when a night where I remember playing in college. I went to my center one night and I said, "Do not pass me the puck tonight." Like my hands feel like I soaked them in formaldehyde overnight. So I said, I'll be the first guy in. I'll be the first guy in on the forecheck. I'll throw some big hits. I took face-offs when I was killing penalties. I said, I'll win the face-offs. I'll back check aggressively. I'll do everything else right. You can just concentrate on offense, but do not, under any circumstances, pass me the puck.
It's funny. I was thinking the same thing with Colorado last night. Like they're in a dogfight, pardon the pun, with the Coyotes, and it ends up being Kadri and Camphor who score the goals, right? Like, yeah. And then they get the pretty one from the top line. Like, it's real interesting to me to see the breakdown of the Leafs and how and why they lost, and that not understand that depth and quality of depth in the lineup means a bleep load in the playoffs.
Yeah, and these teams share a characteristic too. Justin Bourne corrected me the other day when I said, the teams that have won recent cups have all been bigger teams.
Yeah.
And he said, well, Pittsburgh really wasn't. But
no.
Most of the teams that are still playing have size, have depth, have a deep defense. And, like on Toronto, when Jake Muzzin won his cups in L.A., he was the number 3 or 4 defenseman.
Right.
And here he's number 2. They just don't have enough quality. Morgan Riley's a marvelous number 1, but they just don't have enough quality or depth on their D. And so that's one common characteristic that these teams all seem to have is, like Chicago, they had to plug in another defenseman tonight, and they've got a guy who looks just fine. So I think the depth is important. I think the bite is important. But I think this all started, again, I don't feel we're piling on at Sportsnet because we called this all in real time. When they signed Tavares, we all said great, but it's a 7-year deal. They're probably going to choke on the last couple of years of that deal. And we said it also induces a cap issue. So then they signed Nylander, then they signed Matthews, then they signed Marner, and they got $40 million tied up in 4 guys, and they're all forwards.
Yeah.
And that we said right there, that means Jake Gardner's gone. So one quality defenseman gone. Hainsey's gone, who was an important part of their team. So we've been calling out in real time. Now everyone's jumping on them now and saying they spent too much. They did this, they did that, they don't have this. But I think we've called these things out as they've occurred. So I don't feel like we're piling on. They need to upgrade their defense, and they have to get out of this cap hell somehow.
Brian Burke joining us here on Tim and Sid. What do you think of those end-of-season chats with the media? I mean, you've been on the other side. Do you think we, the fans, the media, can actually draw conclusions from what for many are just talking points?
I'm an expert in these end-of-season failure press conference, and that's why I say I'm not. I'm very careful when I talk about this stuff to point out that I speak with authority on end-of-year press conferences when you've had disappointing results.
Berkey, forgive me. Only one team, last check, and I think you confirmed this to me the last time we spoke, only one team wins the cup per year. I can confirm with the NHL offices. Do not rip on yourself for that, please. Lots of GMs have the same type of news conference.
Yeah, but when you miss the playoffs and you have that news conference,
that's tough. Okay, all right, good point.
So I think we used to spend a lot of time on the messaging. So Pat Park was our media relations guy, and he'd say, okay, here's the 3 messages you have to make here that have to come across. One is, it's not good enough. We failed. It's not good enough. We say it's not good enough. We don't let just the media say that. Second, we're sorry. We let the season ticket holders down. We're sorry it happened. And third is, what are we going to do to fix this? And that's what troubled me about the press conference was I heard the GM say, we believe in our process. We believe in the players we have. We're going to stay the course. And I'm like, I wanted to hear we're going to get some angry, ugly people. We're going to upgrade our defense. We're going to make some changes because they're not built for playoff success. They're built for good regular seasons. And to me, Brendan Shanahan was part of championship teams and played real hard. I can't imagine that he likes watching this, but they're like, no, we believe in our process. We're sticking with our process, and we're just going to stay the course. And I'm like, as a season ticket holder, that's not a message I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear we're going to get bigger. We're going to upgrade our D. We're going to figure out the goaltending position, whatever it is, but not we're staying the course. Okay, stay the course means 4 years in a row out in the first round, and the 4th year really not even out in the first round. You didn't make the playoffs. You didn't make the Sweet 16.
Right.
The one thing I heard a lot of is from the players and from Kyle and Brendan, aside from we need to get better and it's unacceptable, we do believe in the group or the core. Did that team look like on the ice they believed in each other at times? That was my biggest beef with what I heard yesterday. And it's a nice line to say, and it looks good in print, and it looks good in a tweet. That team at times does not look. Are you telling me when that line change happened and it was Marinson and Anderson on the ice, that team believed in each other like that? I find that hard to believe.
Well, I think they're a tight group. I think this pause has really made teams come together, I think. I don't think they have a monopoly on that. But talking to different players through the pause and how they were staying in touch with Zoom calls and calls with the coaching staff, and it forced teams to come together a little more. It was an abnormal season, obviously. And I think that bonding effect, I think Kyle's right. I think his team is close, but I think they all are now.
Right. The one thing I want to ask you, and listen, I know that people think of you as an old school guy, but I do know that you've put your time in on analytics. I know you've been to the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and I wonder if the way that the NHL officiates the Stanley Cup playoffs differently than they officiate the regular season, and the way teams play in the postseason differently than the way they do in the regular season, could cause the analytics to lie a little bit to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Could you see something like that? Because it ends up being a small sample size, especially if you go out in the first round or the qualifying round, for you to judge your team on the playoffs when you've only got 7 games or 5 games versus the regular season. But eye test, we all see the game changes in the postseason, no?
Well, the first time I'm going to plug my daughter here on radio here, because
Right.
The first time I got asked to speak at the Sloan Conference, my daughter Katie was a student in the MBA program at MIT and was in the room when I spoke at it. And then it got so big they stopped having it at MIT. They have it at the Boston Convention Center now. It's 3,000 people.
Right.
And my first appearance at the big conference was, I said, analytics are like a lamppost to a drunk, useful for support, but not necessarily for illumination. And I really believe that. I think analytics are important. You ignore them at your peril. But I think teams that rely strictly and solely on analytics, I mean, the problem with analytics is that you block a shot, right? Mm-hmm. So in the first period, you're killing a penalty and you block a shot in your shin pad. That goes on the sheet as a block shot. In the third period, you dive in front of a puck with your face, lose 4 teeth and get 14 stitches. That goes on the sheet as a block shot. So I don't think there's enough qualitative information in there as much as quantitative. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2, it doesn't show toughness in an analytics chart. Like, it doesn't show some of the intangibles you need to win. It doesn't show leadership. So to me, I think it's important, and we relied heavily on it in Calgary. We used it a lot for game preparation. We used it a lot for the draft. But our first evaluation tool was eyeballs. We watched the guy play. Our second evaluation was background check. Find out as much as we can about this kid. Then we looked at the analytics. This is a guy we like. We think he's a prospect. We've examined his character. He's from a really good family. His work ethic's great. Now we'll look at the analytics. So we used it, and it would sort guys out for us, but it was also the third tool we reached for. And when I spoke at Sloan the one time at the MIT conference, I said, okay, just imagine your neighbor says, hey, I got a leaky sink. What's the tool you reach for? And I got a blank look. I said, a wrench. Jesus, Murphy, a wrench.
I was going to say wrench. Yeah.
Nobody knew what a wrench was. And I was like, Scott, are we that helpless?
Sometimes, yes. Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid. Burke, I apologize for circling back on this one, but I'm curious. With what team and when did you do an end of season and you had your notes and you knew where you wanted to go with it, but that one reporter who was always a pain in your ass just pushed the right buttons and you went off in a way that you regretted after the fact, but in the moment you just couldn't help it?
I think that end of season press conference is really for your season ticket holders and sponsors. I think it's important you keep your head. I don't remember ever losing my cool. Now, when I left Toronto and was fired, I had a press conference, and Steve Simmons, who I don't care for at all, asked a question. And that's proof to me that there is a God. Because he asked me, where do you stand with USA Hockey? I said, you have to ask them. I said, Steve, the best thing about today is that I never have to speak to you again.
I remember that quote.
Yeah.
So if anyone questions the existence of God, he exists. Because Steve Simmons asked me a question.
Berkey, always great chopping it up with you. Thanks for doing this. Stay well, and we'll see you on the TV. And I don't know, are you working today? Are you doing it tonight?
No.
All right.
Working the next 3 nights.
Right.
All right.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for talking to us on a day off then, and we'll be watching tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, guys.